What's going on, everybody? I am Keandre, this is Hoop Intellect, and welcome back to the channel. Now today we're doing a question and answer video. I asked the YouTube community page and Twitter to ask me some NBA draft questions, whatever they had. I definitely want to do at least one more of these before November 18th, so if you didn't get a chance to ask a question this time, make sure to leave it down in the comments down below. But let's go ahead and get into it. So we're going to start on Twitter. First question comes from Lakers No R. Not exactly sure how to say your Twitter name, but it's a Brazilian page. Shout out to all my followers from Brazil on YouTube and Twitter. Y'all show a lot of love. And the question is, who do you think will be the 5 sleepers in this year's draft? Well, it's kind of hard to give 5 sleepers, off the top of my head. But I think I can give you a couple. I think that Peyton Pritchard is a guy who I think everybody's collectively kind of underrating. I think his ability to control the game, make plays for others while being able to shoot really well off the dribble, especially from deep. I think he has a little bit more off-ball potential than he's given credit. And defensively, I don't think that he's a net negative as some of the other shooters who are projected to go late in the second round. I think he's somebody who should be looked at as early as the late first round into the early second. Another guy who's a kind of a deep sleeper is Leslie Varner, the second out of Rio Grande Valley. I think his ability to shoot it, most importantly, puts him in contention to be drafted. I'd be pretty surprised if he actually got drafted, but he's on my short list as undrafted free agents. He's got good size, and he's a pretty good athlete. He moves pretty well. He's got a solid handle too, so he's definitely somebody who, if you are looking for shooters, somebody you would bring in, try to develop. Next question is from my guy Chris LeBron at the Off the Ball Pod. He said, who's the one player you're convinced is a first round pick but likely won't go in round 1? This is kind of a tough question because I think there's like 40 to 45 players who could possibly get drafted in the first round. But off the top of my head, I think Zeke Naji is a guy who I know a lot of people are indifferent about him. I have him as somebody who's in my top 30, so I just think his ability to shoot it, and you can see in some of the workout videos, he's already extended his range. Shot looks really smooth. His energy and effort on the glass, can't teach effort. And then, at his size, he's a really good athlete. He has the potential to be a solid defender on the perimeter. Just overall, I think he's someone who is definitely a first-round pick. However, he may slide into the early second. Another guy who I think has the talent to be a surefire first-round pick, but in a lot of mocks, well, at least the ones that I've seen, he's fallen out of the first round, is Jameis Ramsey. He's one of the youngest players in this draft. His combination of athleticism, ability to shoot it from deep, defensive potential mixed with the youth. There's a lot of things that he has to patch up, effort, just being technically sound defensively. You mix that combination of skill, talent, raw athleticism, you have someone who I think is definitely a first round pick. However, as things have gone, he may not be there. So appreciate the question, Chris. This question is from Brooklyn Says. It says, if Brooklyn keeps the pick at 19, basically he's asking what the Nets should do with the 19th pick. They're in a really interesting spot, I think, because you've got Kyrie and KD, who 30 a night, 35 a night, depending on, they're in my personal top 5 of most skilled offensive players ever. And then you've got Spencer Dinwiddie and Karis LeVert, who have shown that they can put up 20 on a playoff team, albeit in the East, but they have done that consistently. And the rest of the roster basically needs to just be filled out with glue guys, people who can defend first and foremost, unselfish, and then really just play hard. Because I know they have title aspirations, so that should be their main focus and goal. So at 19, I think you look at guys like Desmond Bane, Sadiq Bey, if he's there, Jalen Smith. Maybe you trade up for Patrick Williams if he falls. Aaron Nesmith, Tyler Bay would be interesting. I think Josh Green also. I think guys like that who play hard, are unselfish, maybe a little bit older, could possibly contribute to a Nets team with championship aspirations next season. Now they're probably not gonna be Tyler Hero and be starting in the finals next year, and the Nets still probably have another move to make, but without making too many projections, that's the direction I would go in if I was the Nets. Appreciate the question. Next question comes from @Lion2myself on Twitter. Who is the most overrated player in this draft class? We all talk about under the radar guys, but who sticks out as overrated? Now, for me personally, I don't really like to get into, calling people overrated, off the bat, because all these guys are really talented. But if we are talking about it from the perspective of seeing like a couple mocks here going someplace and where they're being drafted, I think a guy like Obi Toppin has been talked about a little bit too much. I think people have started to, place him more properly, but if anybody has really been talked about as too overrated, I think he's one of them. And then the next guy is probably Alexi Pokusevsky for me personally, because I think he has probably one of the higher ceilings in this draft, but also one of the lower floors. There's a lot of variables that will go into deciding whether or not he becomes, a star or somebody who never really sees the floor. Like, everybody isn't going to go from being 6'10", 150 pounds like Giannis to this physical specimen that we've never seen before. That's not just going to happen happen overnight, but he does have great talent. I just wouldn't put him in that top 10. I've seen a few people put him in the top 10 range, but that's just not where I think that he deserves to go. Appreciate the question. That is going to do it for the Twitter questions. Now we'll move over to the YouTube section. Brian Taylor asked, do you think there's a legitimate chance Ball falls out of the top 3? Short answer is definitely, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. I have LaMelo as the second ranked player in this draft. With the Warriors going number 2, it kind of complicates some things. If they aren't able to make a trade, they'll probably go with Wiseman or Denny Avdia if Minnesota takes Anthony Edwards. They go Wiseman or Denny Avdia, and then at 3, if Wiseman is still there, Charlotte could take Wiseman or they take Ball. If Charlotte doesn't take him, obviously he'd be outside of the top 3. Zane Latif says, do you expect the Celtics to find a way to trade up in the draft or trade up for a vet? Now, I don't really know what you mean by trade up for a vet, but I don't think the Celtics will be able to pull off a trade up in the draft. I think when you look at like the teams that are in that like 8, 9, 10 range, I know they want Okongwu or Wiseman. They probably need to get into that area. I just don't think it really makes sense for a lot of those teams to tack on all those picks at the same time. I think possibly the Knicks, it could make sense for them. But if the Knicks don't bite, then I don't think they'll be able to find a suitor. The good thing is they would probably be able to get a big later in the draft. I just don't think the Celtics need or want all of those rookies. Already in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, they got Romeo Lakeford. They're still trying to develop. So I know they're going to try, but I think it's going to be more difficult than it would seem. Jerome Perrin asks, do you think age will really have an impact on college stars in the next coming years? Now, age has been something that it's always been a talking point in, talking about the NBA draft. I think it only really matters when you're talking about guys who project to be stars, who you want to have as like one of your 2 to 3 best players on your team in the future. And when you have a guy who's 19 and you have a guy who's 23 and you're projecting them to be major contributors, like that's definitely a factor. But then you got guys like who 23 go late first round. He's going to be a complimentary guy, probably a 6-man, but he's really good at what he does. Like, then it doesn't really matter as much as if that guy is 19, 20, as if when you're projecting what their game is. That's how I see it. Now, Mitchell Besong says, what should the Warriors do with the second pick in the draft? I think the Warriors should trade the pick, in short. With the age of Steph, Clay, and Draymond, I think they should do whatever possible to get another high-impact guy on their team, because I think they can really make a good run at the West next season, especially with all the rest they've had. Like, they're going to be coming out guns blazing early, so I think they should find some sort of trade. Brian Q asks, who do you think will be an unexpected riser? Will any of the draft combine drills affect any of the prospect stock? Now, there hasn't been a whole lot of stuff that's come out of, the NBA draft combine workouts and everything, or at least information that's really valuable. I mean, we've seen a couple people do the shooting drills and the star drill and everything, whatnot. I think that Caleb Wesson was actually pretty interesting. I've heard he's lost some more weight, so he could rise into the second round as somebody who was probably going to go undrafted otherwise. Trent K asks, what team in your opinion will come out of this draft the undisputed winner? That's an interesting question. I think that if we take a look at the teams in this draft, I think a team like the Knicks have a really good chance to get pieces who can really propel them into the future. That would be a team, if they do the correct things, they can get 3 really, really good players in this draft. Other team like Philly, they have a ton of picks so they can get some shooters in this draft. That's who I would be targeting if I was them. But other than that, it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, you've got the guys at the top, so those are going to be priority. Who ends up being the best out of that is going to probably win the draft. But from overall perspective, I think the Knicks have a really good chance to, turn their franchise around in this draft. Miles Martinez asks, what prospect do you think will fall the most on draft day? It's another interesting question. I think this is all this stuff is kind of relative because, like I said before, there's a lot of players who can go in a lot of different places from that 20 to 40 range. But if we're talking about one player I think could fall, definitely Trey Jones. He has a good chance of falling out of the first round. So I guess that would be my pick. Zach Carlson asks, would Marcus Howard be a first round pick if he was 3 inches taller? I like this question. I don't think so, but I think he would be more, he'd be more appreciated and be, at least considered in the end of the first round to, into the middle of the second, somewhere in there. I've seen some people have him all the way outside the top 60, considering just, what he can do on the floor. He definitely does have his limitations, and some of the things won't be able to translate as easily to the NBA level, especially at his height. But, he's really talented. So, to answer your question, would he be a first round pick if he was 3 inches taller? Probably not, but his stock would definitely rise. Aiden Flores says, I honestly don't get why nobody is talking about Tyrese Maxey to the Orlando Magic. That would be perfect with their defensive identity. So with that in question, who do you think would be the best fit with him? I do like Orlando for Maxey. I think that he would be gone before he gets there, but I like that backcourt a lot. Other than that, before there, I think the Pelicans and the Celtics have a really good chance of taking him right before the Magic get there. But I'd be pretty surprised if he gets past the Magic. Isaac Wardle says, I am a huge Jazz fan. Who do you think the Jazz should pick at 23? Now, a lot of the time I've had Teo Maledon go to the Jazz. I think that's a solid pick. I think a guy like Tyler Bay, but I don't know. The Jazz are kind of an interesting team as they probably be a top 5 seed in the West, but at the same time, a couple of the pieces are getting older. Conley's getting older, has a big contract. There's rumors about Gobert. Basically got Donovan Mitchell as your future, and then everything else, you can play with from there. So I think Desmond Bane is another guy who would be really interesting on the Jazz as well. Kamsi Mocha asks, which potential lottery prospect has the biggest bust potential? Again, like I said before, I don't really like doing this kind of stuff, but I think if I had to pick a few, I would say Obi Toppin, just because defensively there made some major red flags, and if he's not in a position to, grow his offensive game and develop that way with the necessary reps, and if he doesn't, develop more wing skills, I think things could go poorly for him. Now, bust is also relative. I think that he'll end up contributing, but, maybe not be that star player that some people see him as. Banjo Tolentino asks, biggest steal from the second round? Depending on where some of these guys go, people could be steals or whatever, but I think there's a lot of value in the bigs in this draft. There's not a whole lot that separates some of them after Okongwu and Wiseman. So you've got guys like Isaiah Stewart, Reggie Perry, Daniel Oturu, Vernon Carey, who could all end up in the second round. Zeke Naji as well. They could all end up as second round picks. So anybody in that 30 to 45 range could have a chance to get somebody who could eventually even become a starter. Mitchell B-Song, my bad bro, butchering your name. But he asks another question, 2021 Rookie of the Year. These rookies have the chance to, you know, be some of the most like effective from the jump that we've seen. I mean, they've been training for the NBA draft for like 8 months, not knowing when it was going to happen. So they're all in tip-top shape, I would assume. And, you know, with the long layoff, they'll be able to come right away and, you know, make an impact. If I had to pick a player who ends up being the Rookie of the Year, I think LaMelo Ball definitely has a good chance, depending on the team, just based on the way he plays. I think depending on the team that Desmond Bane goes to, he could be a kind of a sleeper pick. And then Wiseman, is if he goes to the Warriors and puts up, you know, 14 and 11, that could go ahead and give it to him, because they'll probably be a top 4 or 5 seed in the West. So they could win there. I don't really have a definitive answer. We're gonna have to wait and see which teams everybody's on. Oh, and another question people wanted me to throw in there was, who is the guy that you like a little bit more than the rest of, or at least the consensus does? And I think that player for me is Precious Achiuwa. I think that he is a lottery talent. I think when you look at his athletic ability, one of the better bigs or big forwards in this draft at defending on the perimeter. He doesn't have that great of a shot yet, but his ability to handle, he was a forward all throughout high school, his game playing before he just started playing the 4 and 5 at Memphis. So I think when you add all those things together, just look at his potential, I think he's definitely a top 20 guy to me personally. But I think that is going to do it for this question and answer video. Again, I want to say thank you to all the people getting us to 12,500 subscribers. That is ridiculous. When I started doing these videos, I think I was at like maybe 2,000, like maybe just hit 2,000. So that's really pretty ridiculous. And yeah, if you guys want your question answered next video, make sure to leave a comment down below. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you are new, and I'm gonna see y'all next time. More great NBA content on the way. I'm Keandre, this is Hoop Intellect, and I'm out. Really?
And you know I get around.
Are you about it? Yeah.
Hey.
Are you about it?